Alright, welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about Ultratechs. Let's do it. What's going on, guys? Thanks for tuning in. Today we've got the first Microtech video of the channel, and I'm going to be reviewing the Ultratech. So I've got two models here. This guy is the Apocalyptic Blade finish with distressed red handles from DLT Trading, got that one. And then this is the infamous Bounty Hunter that we all know and love. So we're going to be talking about both of these. For size comparison, let's just do the one here. So first off, we're looking at a 3.5-inch blade, 5-inch handle. So you got 8.5 inches overall, and closed up, right? Your 5 inches. It's about a 1/2 inch thick, which is not too bad. Nice and smooth, carries in the pocket really well. Let's bring in some size comparisons. First knife that I like to compare it to is the Paramilitary 2 from Spyderco. So blades are, about the same overall length. And the cutting area is, well, it's a little hard to compare the Tanto with the Pelican shape. But in terms of the, the finger choil and the sharpening choil, they both start at about the same place, the blades. So the cutting area, if you can compare the Tanto with the Pelican blade, they're pretty similar. Next up, another similar size blade is the Benchmade 940. Slightly smaller in the handle, but again, the blade is about 3.5 inches. And your sharpening choil puts it about at the same starting point. So very similar. This one's just the reverse Tanto. Alright, those are the similar other... Oh, and for just kicks, I got the bug out too. A little smaller. These are my two red knives. But you can see the Ultratech is not huge, but it's also a good size. I like that 3.5-inch size. That's what most of my EDC knives are, kind of in that perfect 3.5 range. So let's bring these guys back. So another Microtech we have here is the Troodon, and this guy's a little smaller. He's about a 3-inch blade, and let's see, it looks like we've got about a 4.5-inch handle with that glass breaker. So a little smaller, a little bit slimmer up here by the the button, the slider, I guess. And another pretty noticeable difference is the size of the little slider here. And so this is one thing that I like about the Ultratech over the Troodon, is that it's got slightly more area. So the button doesn't dig into your hand quite as much. The Troodon's not bad or painful by any means, it just takes a little bit more getting used to. Whereas the Ultratech, I can sit here and fire this all day. It's a little bit harder to do with the Troodon. Also, I'm doing it in my left hand. It's a little bit harder for me personally. This one is a little snappier though. I think it's going to vary a little bit knife to knife, but this one is, the Troodon is a little snappier. The Troodon's also more expensive by like $100, I think, and so that's something that's kind of perplexed me. Maybe because it's smaller, it's harder to make the parts. I don't know. If someone knows specifically why the Troodon is more expensive than the Ultratech, please let me know, because I'm curious. Now another thing, this is the only knife that this is the only Microtech that I actually own. These two belong to my friend Robin. Yes, he has more Microtechs than me. He told me I could use these two for the video as long as I said that. So there's the disclaimer. Robin, you have more Microtechs than me. You're cooler than me. There we go. Thank you for letting me use these knives. Okay, anyways, let's get to the pros and cons here. So first on the pros, the action. I mean, it's just, it's fantastic. It's really one of the best things about these knives. And in my opinion, yes, the opening is super fast, but I can also open this really fast. So in terms of like speed, they're pretty similar. But what I really think is the benefit is the closing. It's just, you don't have to, actuate any lock or anything. You just pull the button back, boom, closed. Super easy, really nice when you're out there, cutting stuff, working with it. It's just, it's so convenient. And it's nice and compact. it's, you know, it's really safe. I get people asking me all the time if, you know, like for safety reasons, if you had this up against your arm or yourself and you actuate the button, would it stab you? And the answer is no. So you can see I have a napkin here, and okay, that was not a good example. Napkin might not be rigid enough. Oh, there it went. And what happens is when it senses a little bit of pressure, it disengages the spring immediately. So, you know, if you put it up against your arm, would it cut you? Yes, it would cut you. The tip is extremely sharp. But would it stab into your body? Absolutely not. You know, and that's kind of a cool like safety that's kind of built in. So you can't just put this up to something and stab into it. It won't happen. It's not possible. So that's good. But yeah, so the action's great. You can't argue with that. It's fantastic. Next, the steel is really, really good. On this guy we have CTS 204P, and Microtech does a lot. Can we focus? Microtech does a lot with 204P. There we go. You can see it's really nice because it's printed on there nice and small, but it's still clearly visible. And this guy has the apocalyptic finish blade has the writing on it, whereas the Bounty Hunter is totally clean, which is kind of nice. Anyways, yeah, so 204P, really good steel, and I think Microtech does a really good job with their heat treating. I've seen some pretty intense torture tests with these things, and the stuff that this steel can accomplish on this knife is nothing short of phenomenal. So that's pretty cool. And I've used this a bunch, and it hasn't dulled like at all. Excuse me. So really great steel. They also do, you know, stuff with M390, which is pretty much the analog to 204P. They've done some stuff in LMAX, which is pretty cool. In fact, this guy, we don't actually for sure know what the steel is. We think it's 204P because it came in one of the most recent runs, but they've also done runs in LMAX, which is pretty cool. So yeah, Microtech definitely is going to always use those premium steels, which is a great plus. And the thing I like about the Apocalyptic, and this one sort of has it too, this one's a little bit lighter stonewash, but the Apocalyptic is basically a really heavy stonewash. And what's nice about that is it doesn't show marks as much. So this one's a little marked up because I've been using it, but ultimately it looks kind of like part of the finish. So compared to a satin blade, it's gonna hide those marks really well. Next, I really like the clip. It contours really well with your hand, and so it fits right on your finger. And it's just super comfortable to hold because of that clip. And then if you reverse grip it, you know, it's even better because your middle finger just goes right in that groove. And so the clip is nice. You know, it looks kind of cool when it's out of your pocket, and it sits in your pocket really well. It's not super deep, but it definitely feels really comfortable, and it's secure. Next thing, talking about pocket carry, the size is really nice. So it's really nice and slim, and just straight. It's perfectly straight, and so it slips in your pocket really easily, and it's really comfortable holding it there. And then, you know, with that also, I just really like the design. I think these things look amazing. You know, with most Microtechs, like the Troodon too, these things, the design is incredible. They look super cool. They do tons of really cool color variations. There's so many options with like blades, you know, finishes, colors, all kinds of things. And so there's just a lot of cool things that you can do with the design. As well as, you know, in general, the whole Microtech, the company as a whole, they just make really high quality, heavy duty, excellent knives. You know, they're an American company. I think they're in Tennessee. Correct me if I'm wrong. But they do fantastic work, and everything that comes out of their you know, warehouse, their shop is phenomenal. And so that's it gives me confidence in their tools, and so that's something that I like. It's just the Microtech name. Now, in terms of the cons, there's only a few here, but I want to bring them up. So in terms of cutting geometry, it's not the best slicer. So, you know, especially when you're comparing like this really nice flat ground PM2, it just doesn't compare. And even like the Bug Out is a really thin, full flat grind, really slicey blade. The Ultratech doesn't really quite do that. You know, it's gonna be hard to tell with this lighting, but the edge is, you know, not terribly thin, and the angle is a little steep, so it's actually probably more comparable with the 940, which is a well-known, not extremely great slicer. So that's something that I've kind of noticed cutting up cardboard boxes and stuff. The good thing about that, though, with this angle being a little more obtuse and having a little more material there, is that it's going to hold up to a lot more kind of abusive damage. So it's probably going to be a little bit more tough and maybe, you know, hold that edge a little bit longer, although it's not going to be as fine of an edge, so it's not going to bite quite as much compared to this PM2, which, you know, I think the edge is like closer to 17 degrees or 16 degrees, and this thing is just a slicing machine. But, you know, with a Steelite 204P, not necessarily the toughest steel in the world, it might be good to have a little bit thicker edge. But just keep that in mind depending on what task you want. Outdoor heavy-duty knife, this is, you know, it's pretty good, but it's not going to be the sliciest thing in the world. Next, when it comes to gripping, when you're cutting kind of hard stuff, in my experience, I had a little bit of a tricky time figuring out where to put my thumb. So, like PM2, I like to put the thumb up here when you're cutting down, because then you can apply that downward pressure. On the Ultratech, it's a little hard to do that, because to get like good resistance on the thumb, you can put it here and push up against the, you know, the thumb ramp guy here. But it's a little awkward because my thumb feels a little far back. So where it wants to go is here. But the problem is if you're slicing down, you're putting backward pressure on that slider, and you could move it and potentially even bring the blade in. So that's something, you know, you could hold it like this. It's not as ideal. To me, I like to have my thumb on the top. So this works. It's not the most comfortable thing in the world. So keep that in mind. And then the last thing, and I can't speak for all Microtechs, but the ones that I have in my care right now, the blade wiggles a little bit. And that's just a factor of being an OTF, you know, being out the front, right? The blade's not actually like, you know, here we've got the lock pressing up against it and it's sandwiched here at the pivot. With this guy, that doesn't happen. Now, I don't know the exact mechanism inside. I've never taken one of these apart. But it's not actually... Can you hear that? So it just wiggles ever so slightly. Hardly noticeable when cutting or like doing anything with it. It's just a thing. And if you don't like, you know, a blade that moves a little bit, well, just keep that in mind. It's not going to change the function. It's not going to, you know, it's still a really sturdy lockup. Sturdy knife, heavy-duty knife, that's not really going to affect the performance from what I've seen. But it does wiggle a little bit, so I don't know, it's just something you should know before you order one without seeing it. I don't know. It's overall, it's a phenomenal knife. There's just those few little nitpicky things that I've noticed. But yeah, check them out because there is so many variations, and you know, there's something for everyone. So, if you don't like these two particular colors, well, I find that surprising because I think they're sweet. If you don't like these particular colors, there is so many more options out there and so many other blade shapes. You know, if you like the double edge, the classic OTF kind of look, there's plenty of those. They have like a drop point. They have that cool Spartan blade now. All kinds of options. So, check them out. Microtech, Ultratech. Great knives. Really fun to... just sit around and play with, but also not afraid to go to work. So with that, I will leave you guys until next time. Thanks so much for tuning in, and yeah, stay safe. We'll see you soon.